started. My name is Denali Wilson. I'm with Aggie Solidarity. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out here tonight. We feel like it's really important to have this space for critical dialogue, and that's the main purpose of these debates. And what we'd like is, even after the debates conclude, that dialogue is something that continues on campus. So we'd really like to thank the College Republicans, or the College Republicans and Democrats, for helping us put this together. We'd especially like to thank our moderator for tonight, Professor Allison Newby, who is the assistant professor of the Department of Sociology here at NMSU, and her specialty is in Latin American border studies. We have a bit of last minute confusion. But we have two representatives from each side. We have Aggies for Ron Paul stepping in for College Democrats this time. College Republicans this time, I'm sorry. And for College Democrats, we have Alexandria Almond and Miguel Sosa. And representing the Aggies for Ron Paul, we have Austin Pickrell and Jay Lawrence. And then representing Aggie Solidarity for the radical left, we have Janelle Lopez and Alan Ticker. Tonight we're going to be discussing issues regarding immigration and foreign policy. Each team is going to have 5 minutes to respond to an opening statement, and this is going to be in response to the prompt, what is one change needed in U.S. immigration policy, and what are the 3 most important foreign policy issues for your group today? Then we're going to have a 48-minute session of questions from the moderator, and each team is going to have 2 minutes to respond, and then the first team who responded is going to have an additional 1-minute rebuttal time at the end. Afterwards, then we're going to have a brief question session from the audience. People from the audience will be chosen by the moderator, and again, each group will have 2 minutes to respond. And we wanted to also remind you that this is just the second in a 3-part series of debates. The last month we discussed the economic crisis, and in April we're going to talk about issues in immigration. That's going to be April 24th. Issues in education. I'm sorry. That's going to be April 24th, 7 o'clock. Tuesday, April 24th, 7 o'clock in this room, Hardman Hall 106. So thank you guys for coming out and supporting the debate.
I as well would like to thank everyone for being here. I think that aside from all of our people who are up here on the stage and presenting their views or the various positions, I think it's also a wonderful time for the rest of us to think about different possibilities and to think about different positions as we go forward, especially in an upcoming political season, election year. So we'll be starting today with opening statements from each team. That's what we do, right? Yeah. I've had a long day. I'm sorry. Would you like to, since you guys so nicely volunteered to take the pressure off me in these first few moments? Aggie Solidarity, would you like to make opening statements?
To put it bluntly, we're against mass migration. We're not against the migrants. We're against the forces that make a huge part of the world's population literally need to migrate in order to survive. We're against the economic and social systems that force people to choose between deprivation, desperation, and having to go into cities or the U.S. to be exploited as an underclass of the working population in factories or in the fields. We need to look at the roots of immigration and remember that they lie in the complete imbalances of power and economics between the first world and the third world. They lie in the need of capitalists for a massive oversupply of labor to keep wages down. They also lie in the trade policies that further the third world's dependence on the first world, and on bad governments that go along with the policies that only create further oppressive systems. So we're against the forces that cause immigration, but we cannot be against migrants themselves. It is absolutely immoral to punish the people at the very bottom of the social ladder for the failures of the exploitative system that we had such a large part in creating. It's absolutely wrong to punish people for arbitrarily with border fences, or by hoarding people by the thousands into private prisons without first addressing what causes them to migrate in the first place. So our one change to immigration policy would be to go to the very root of the problem. In order to solve the problem of mass migration, we have to completely overhaul our economic system and how our economic relations devastate a large part of the world's population. Our current immigration systems causes suffering and hardship for the most vulnerable people in society. It creates a subservient shadow society. Any person with any sense of morality should be outraged by this. We need to end the ridiculous system of quotas, the system that lets only anyone with money come here legally, but makes it impossible on the poor. And we need to address the roots of the problem, which include our trade policies and economic relations with the third world. Quite simply, we have to choose between a moral immigration policy and the current economic system. We can't have both.
So that leads us to our first foreign policy point. The first step in transforming our economic relations with the world, and particularly Latin America, is ending our free trade policies. These policies have had a devastating effect on much of the world's most vulnerable. They're killing small farmers, they're killing collective forms of production like ejidos in Mexico. They're killing public institutions that benefit millions of people. Especially in Mexico and Central America, these policies have forced millions to abandon their communities and migrate to become the cheap labor supply that industry needs. We're forcing these devastating policies on other countries, along with the IMF and the World Bank, often with the majority of the population completely opposed to them. This is a form of violence, and what we end up with is a system where money, goods, business can freely cross borders, but people can't. Where people have no real free choice, where they're forced into filling whatever roles transnational business assigns to them. Along with our economic policy, we need to completely revamp our military policy. We have almost 900 bases in almost 50 countries around the world. We have 200,000 troops stationed overseas, not counting our wars, not counting our black ops or our secret prisons. We literally force people off of land to build some of these bases. We just did a couple of years ago in an island off in the Indian Ocean. And what for? This isn't about freedom. This isn't about spreading democracy or protecting us. This is about ensuring our dominance over the world, protecting our economic interests. This is about forcing our policies down the world's throat at gunpoint and pumping up our economy with military spending. Our military strategy follows an imperialist logic and a colonialist logic, and it needs to end. We need to close the bases, we need to stop carrying out coups, flying drones over people's heads, and we need to end the wars. We need a drastic reduction in military forces, and we need to completely demilitarize our foreign policy. And our third point is that we should be taking the lead in creating and fortifying international justice systems and international regulatory bodies. This isn't being done now, but it's vital if we have any interest in ensuring human rights or preventing the worst abuses of governments and shady practices of big business. We're not talking about institutions like the Security Council where 5 countries have all the power. We're not talking about the G20 or institutions that the U.S. can further its own interests with. What we're talking about is new institutions that give the world's poor, the world's most vulnerable, a voice in economic and social policy that affects them, and some power, that put their needs on the same plane with those of the U.S. and Europe and the elite class. We're talking about regulatory bodies that stop the worst abuses of big business, that hold them accountable, because business isn't something that respects national boundaries. And we need mechanisms in order to regulate them that go beyond national boundaries as well at this point. We need institutions that help to end child labor. We need institutions that enforce minimum wages, workers' rights, prevent tax havens from forming, to end debt slavery and sex slavery. This is obviously a direct challenge to world capitalism, but it's absolutely vital if we want to live in a just society. Also necessary is an expansion of our international court systems, of mechanisms to hold bad governments accountable, and along with this, the ability to enforce human rights or workers' rights violations. That may give us some headway in solving horrendous situations like Syria, Israel, and Palestine, Uganda, without militarily intervening or without unilaterally intervening. But it also necessitates that the powerful, like the US, like Europe, like China, submit to those mechanisms, submit to those institutions, and are held accountable for their abuses as well. The institutions that we have now are weak partly because we think that they're good enough to try Africans and African warlords in, but they're not good enough to try our own leaders or our own soldiers in. Our proposal would further the cause of justice, would further the cause of freedom, and would necessarily challenge U.S. dominance in world affairs. All of this implies a radical shift in U.S. foreign policy, where we don't just focus on conserving American power and dominance over the world, or protecting the interests of the elite economic class, but where we help to create a more just society. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Aggie Solidarity, and now we'll hear from Aggies for Ron Paul in a brief introductory statement.
Good evening, I'm Austin. I'm with Aggies for Ron Paul. I want to thank everyone here for having us. College Democrats and Aggie Singularity, and College Republicans Solidarity, sorry. And of course, the College Republicans, to shine a little light, we were informed that we would be stepping in tonight, or offered the position to step in tonight at 6 o'clock this evening. And I had a copy of the questions in my hand at about 6:40, so I apologize. We are not as prepared as we should be tonight, but we're going to do our best, and we're going to try and speak to the issues. Our organization here on campus is in support of Ron Paul for president, and you know, outside of this room, we're doing activities to further that. But today, we're here to represent a more libertarian view on politics, which is somewhat compatible with Republicans, but also, you know, we are our own political theory, and so tonight we're going to be discussing that. I was born and raised here in New Mexico. This is my home, and as a border state, as a very Hispanic culture here, immigration has been a very personal issue. I think for everyone here, you know, anyone who's lived in the state long enough can attest to that. We believe that rounding up illegal immigrants like cattle and exporting them out of our country is immoral and useless and futile. We believe that there are different methods to deter illegal immigration, and one of those is the welfare state. We believe that handing out free systems and free products and welfare to illegal immigrants is this great incentive for them to come over to our country illegally, and with our atrocious system for getting them here legally, they have no reason to go through the legal means. So we need to not only reform our legal system of immigration, but we need to end this welfare system and the welfare state. Stop giving handouts to citizens who are not contributing their taxes. A good economy will always need more workers, and the more our economy grows and the stronger our economy is, the more we need people to fill jobs, and the more jobs people have, the better for everyone. And by ending our welfare state, not only do we boost our economy, but we also end the incentives for immigrants to come here illegally. And to talk about foreign policy is Jay. He's now
How you doing? I'm Jay. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I served 10 years in the Army active duty. I've been deployed twice. So foreign policy, I'm in line with the libertarian philosophy of non-intervention. We're over there, lives are being lost. We need to end this cycle of violence, nation building. We need to go back to the Constitution when it comes to war. And basically that's it. We need to get back to the Constitution and only declare war. Go to the people. Go to the Congress. And declare war. We haven't declared war since World War II. You know, everything has been a police action dealt with the military-industrial complex. So I agree with solidarity as far as the non-intervention, the bodies of these international organizations. We need to back out of the UN. We need to back out of the UN. And in this cycle of globalization and international bodies that are controlling these wars.
To address the three foreign issues that are most important to us, the first is the quote-unquote wars that we're involved in. Afghanistan, bombing, Syria. We need to end these wars, period. We need to not move our troops around, not use private contractors funded by the government. We need to bring our troops home, and we need to do it now. We need to end these violent acts against other countries and killing not only American soldiers, but foreign civilians. The second point is ending the massive military spread throughout the globe. We have over 900 bases in 130 countries across the world. That's costing us billions of dollars a year, and it's not doing anything to promote our freedom and our liberty and our economic success. And we need to bring those troops home and close down those bases and stop building billion-dollar embassies in countries that we're simultaneously bombing. Our third point has less to do with war, but is war overseas, but war here on our borders with the war on drugs. The war on drugs is a futile act to try and prevent citizens from doing things that they're going to do anyways, and we're spending millions of dollars on incarcerating people and holding people on something that should be their free right to do. Not only is it causing violence, but it's costing us billions of dollars, and that has a lot to do with our border here with Mexico and Latin America with this war on drugs, and that needs to end. Thank you.
Good job!
Thank you, Aggies, for Ron Paul. And now we'll move to an introductory comment from the NMSU Democrats.
I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiances and fidelity to any foreign prince, state, or sovereignty of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen. This is the beginning passage from the oath taken by millions of immigrants, my father included, who have completed the naturalization process to become citizens of the United States of America. The oath that thousands more hope to, want to, and hopefully will take one day. Immigration is considered the building block of the United States of America. The country is populated by immigrants or families who once immigrated. Some states contain more immigrants than others, especially our state of New Mexico, as we're a neighbor to Mexico. These differences, along with political influence, can cause the immigration laws to drastically change from state to state. There is currently a lot of discussion about illegal immigration and how it affects the country. Many illegal immigrants in our country wish to be legal. They just need some guidance and assistance with the process. Immigration reform must promote increased security, earned adjustment for undocumented workers already in the U.S., and an essential workers program to address future labor shortages. The reality is that some of the most anti-immigrant legislators in this country are talking about deporting 12 million undocumented workers. Every nation has a foreign policy to ensure that its needs are represented in the global community and economy. Quoting current Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, America's relationships with our allies are at the center of our engagement with the world. Since taking office, President Obama has strengthened America's old alliances while building new partnerships to confront the challenges of the 21st century. America holds hope for all, those who are citizens and those who want to become citizens. America holds hope for countries who did business with us and countries who joined forces with us to make the world and the economy a better place for all to prosper and live. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those opening statements, and now we'll move on to some brief questions that I've prepared. I must say I had difficulties in narrowing it down and was disappointed when I was told by the organizers that I needed to have just a bit more self-control in terms of questions that I wanted to ask. But why don't we start with immigration, and then we'll move on to some other foreign policy issues. The first question is for the NMSU Democrats, and you have 2 minutes to respond. As several of you mentioned, there are estimates of various millions of undocumented people living currently in the United States, living and working in the United States. Some of these individuals entered the U.S. without inspection. That is, maybe they crossed a border and didn't go through those lovely checkpoints that you go through when you're coming in to the United States. Other people may have come on work visas, student visas, tourist visas, and overstayed those visas. Is this an issue that needs to be addressed in some way? And how should we address this issue if we think it is one? How should we address this issue of 8 to 12 million people living without any sort of legal status within the United States?
I'll see if I can get to that in 2 minutes. It certainly is an issue, and what needs to be addressed is the fact that a country the size of the United States will never be impregnable. However, there have been efforts to secure the border, which should be the first thing that we have to do. There are now more Border Patrol agents on the ground than ever before along the southwest border, which has led to a decrease in apprehensions. That means that less people are crossing. The people that are already here need some way to integrate into the United States. They're here, and there's no way that we can send back 12 million people. Now, that by no means is that a free pass. Those people will need to pay taxes, pay a fine, learn English, and go to the back of the line. But the people that are here just simply can't go back, and they're not going to disappear. So that issue will need to be addressed in the near future. The first thing, though, is to secure our borders, which is already happening through the efforts of this administration.
Okay, thank you. Aggies for Ron Paul.
I think this issue can be dealt with in two separate areas. The first being why people are here and the people that are currently here. What do we do about the people that are here in the United States? And I think that a comprehensive reform of immigration policy is necessary. Make it easier for these people to come forward and legally become United States citizens, so they can pay their dues, so they can pay their taxes and be a contributing member of society. And we make it so hard and we make it so illegal for them to do that they're going to hide away and they're going to stay away and try and remain hidden, try and remain here without paying their dues. If we make it easier for them, if we make it comprehensive, reform to make it simpler and smoother and allow for these people to become real American citizens, it would be a great incentive for them to come forward and become American citizens and to pay their taxes and become a part of society. And if we make it clear that if they don't do this, the punishments will be severe, they have no reason to remain hidden. If they get caught, they get arrested and they get deported because they broke the law. The second issue that we have to look at is immigrants that wish to come here illegally in the future. And that means giving them less reason to come here illegally and giving them more reason to come here legally. We hand out all sorts of welfare programs to people and they're getting a free ride. But when Americans get welfare programs, they're paying their taxes. They're working citizens, they're part of our society. And although I don't believe in welfare handouts, at least they can say that they are Americans getting their hard-earned tax dollars given back to them to some extent. Illegal immigrants cannot. If we can end the incentive for them to come here and simultaneously help them become, those who are already here, become part of our system, it would definitely decrease the number of illegal immigrants. But the idea, something that I wanted to touch on, the idea that we should force these people to learn our language is ridiculous. If I was born here in the United States, completely legal by legal parents, and never learned English in my life, it would be my own mistake, and it is not the government's responsibility to tell a citizen what they have to do and what language they have to learn. I feel that is as bad as telling someone what religion they need to follow. Language is sacred. Is that, am I, oh?
2 minutes goes by pretty darn fast.
Sorry.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, solve the world's problems in 2 minutes.
I know, there you go.
Okay, Aggie Solidarity.
All right, thanks. I would first of all wonder, is that your position or is that Ron Paul's position? But I would also wonder if you or he would let the states decide on those policies, let the states decide if they want everyone to enforce English language policies and stuff like that, because that's what's happening in places like Arizona right now. But anyway, there are millions of undocumented immigrants residing in the U.S., and basically how to address this policy for us, or how to address this problem for us, is a blanket amnesty. If they want to stay here, they should have a way to.